Welcome to Harbor Point TV. We are a church of imperfect people and don't have all the answers, but our goal is this, to be a safe place for everyone. So know that you are welcome here. And our hope is that you might find and take your next step, because the reality is we all have a next step towards knowing God more deeply, following Him more intently, and showing His love to the world more courageously. God is continuing to move in and through this church because of your generosity. Giving is one of the most tangible spiritual practices we have. And the question is this: what is God doing through me with the things He has given to me? So to get more information, get connected, or to make a contribution, visit our website at harborpoint.church. This is Harbor Point TV.
Well, hi, I'm Jeff Prees, and I'm lead pastor here at Harbor Point Church, and we just want to say thanks to all of you for joining us. And we're going to be starting a new series, and the series is called Relationship Reset. And it's just a way just to look at your relationships, no matter whether you're in a marriage relationship or a friendship or you're dating or just at work or whatever. It's looking at your relationships and you say, how can I look at these and maybe reset some things I do? Or how can I look at these things and maybe just figure out how do I get a refresher in this idea of the relationships that I deal with? Why do we need to do this? Well, we need to do this because it's been a tough year. It's been a hard year, and maybe you're like me. I've kind of walked through the year with a funk. I mean, not every day's a funk, but there's a lot of times I don't like myself. And I don't like myself, and oftentimes when life is hard, or I'm in this funk, or I'm in a bad mood, or I can't just figure it out, what happens is I tend to take it out on the people I'm with and love the most. I take it out perhaps on my wife, and I'm not as loving, or I take it out on my kids, and I'm a little bit more distant. So it's important to look at our relationship in this time because it's just a weird, challenging, difficult time. Now we're going to start off with this foundational piece of what relationships are all about. And the great thing is we're going to look at it, and it's wonderful because Jesus said it. So this is what Jesus says in the context of being in relationship. He gathers his disciples around, and it's near the end of his ministry. And so he's already done great teaching, and he's always done amazing miracles. And so he's lived his life with these guys. And as he sits them down, he's saying, essentially, he goes, I'm going to boil this down as I send you guys out and build relationship with people. I'm going to boil it down into what I want you to do. And this is what he says. He says this: by this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. He's saying as you go out and you build relationship with people, the key component is this: your ability to love people. Your ability to love people. Now, when I talk about relationship in the context of relationship, there's no surprise, you get this, that the concept of love comes up. I mean, who doesn't say, of course that's what's going to happen? But the question is not just it's not just about love, but the big question is this: how do we love? How do we love? And we're going to learn a principle, and we're going to learn it through a passage that Paul writes about. And when we do this, I'm going to talk in the context of marriage. Why? Because I'm married. And I think marriages are important as a fabric of families in so many ways. But remember, I want you to look at where you are in your life. And whatever relationship that you are in, leverage this principle and words from Paul in the way of making this connect in any relationship that you're in. You see, the goal of our relationships is to be connected, to be in love. And when I think about this idea of marriage, here's the reality of this. The goal is not just to be married. The goal is to be in a loving relationship. The goal is to be in a loving marriage. I remember doing a wedding. And as I'm in the wedding, you're kind of in the back room with the groomsmen and everything, and they're all talking. And I heard one of the groomsmen say about the groom, he goes, I'm so glad so-and-so is falling in love. And I'm thinking to myself, buddy, falling in love is easy. It's staying in love that's the hard part. And you remember this, remember when you were younger and maybe probably in high school or something, and a cute girl would walk across the quad or across the room, you'd always think to yourself, oh my gosh, I'm in love. Once again, it's the reality. Falling in love is easy. The hard part is staying in love. That's the hard part. And so we want to look at how do we stay in love and have connected, real, intimate relationship and love in the context of marriage. That's what we're going to kind of focus on. Now we're going to look at this passage, and it's a very common passage. And it's actually probably in your brain, it's a simple passage. If you've ever been to a wedding, you've heard this passage. But in reality, it's pretty complex and it's not as easy as we think. And if I'm going to summarize what's going on in the passage we're going to look at, I'm going to summarize it with one word. And that's this idea of expectation. Expectation means looking forward or anticipating. So it's idea of like expectations. But here's the reality of expectations. It's this. The hard part of expectation is, what do we do when they're not met? How do you deal with unmet expectations? That's the challenge in the context of relationship. About 2.5 months ago, I had surgery. I had knee surgery. I had knee replacement. And it's a deal. I mean, I wasn't ready for it, and this thing has just knocked me knocked me back for a while. And so when I went into the surgery, it was the 8th surgery I've had on my body. It's my 8th surgery. And so whenever I have an operation, I go in for surgery, I always have the same gag that I play. So I play this gag. And what happens when you go into surgery, they put the gown on you and they put you, you're in a bed, and then they roll you into a room prior to going into the operating room. And this room has a bunch of different people in there who are all ready to be operated on. And there's a big whiteboard and all of our names are on it. And all the nurses, they stand before it and they kind of look and see what's going on. And so here's my gag. My gag always happens is when I'm lying there, one of the nurses always peels away. So in this case, a guy peels away. And he's got a black Sharpie in his hand, so I know what he's doing. And so what happens is he comes up to me, and this is my gag. And typically, in this case, he goes, how you doing? Remember, I'm getting my knee operated on. So I go, I'm doing awesome. I go, I've been waiting to get this shoulder operated on for like forever. So I love doing that because what I do that is this, all of a sudden they're like thrown off. And typically I get like this stone-walled look on this guy, someone's face when they do it. And then typically they would walk away, they'd huddle together with the other nurses and get all kind of nervous, like what's going on? We're doing something on the wrong limb. And then I'd let them know that it's just a gag. But in this case, that wasn't what happened. This guy looks at me and he goes, oh, that doesn't matter. I'm just here to mark the epidural. And I'm like, what? The epidural? And then he goes, you mean they didn't tell you? Tell me what? Yeah, you're getting an epidural. And the second I heard that, I knew that I was in for like a total different operation than anything that I was used to. And when I hear epidural, I've always thought, like when you have a baby, like having a baby, the hard part is not having the baby. The hard part, I should pause. I'm just kidding. I know having a baby's hard. But I've always thought it's the epidural that I couldn't get through. That is a deal. And so when I hear that I'm having this, I am panic, and he can see it all over my face. And it's not just external panic, but it's this internal thing that's going on. What happened to me? The reality is this. I had an expectation of what I thought this surgery would be. And when it wasn't met, it had this way of impacting every part about me. And that's how we deal with relationships. And that is a problem in the struggle of relationships. So the reality is, in all relationships, how do we deal with unmet expectations? Now, once again, if you've ever been to a wedding, you've seen this passage. And it's 1 Corinthians 13. And so this is what we're going to look at. And it says this: love is patient and kind. And of course, that's easy. We get that. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude, which makes perfect sense. Love is about them. It's not about you. It does not demand its own way, it's not irritable, and it keeps no record of being wrong. So in the context of relationship and love, it keeps no record of being wrong. That's a little more challenging, don't you think? I mean, we all kind of have this struggle with not remembering things, or I've always heard this idea that love has a short memory or something like that, but it's challenging. I have a fatal strategy as a husband that never serves me well. What I do is every time I think something around the house that I want to do, I tell my wife that I'm going to do it. So I tell her this because I want her to think that, I'm always thinking and I'm a go-getter and I'm going to make things happen. And I want her to kind of relax and know that I'm going to take care of things. So I always tell her things like, I was thinking about painting the back fence. I think I'm going to plant the side yard with trees. Or I think I'm going to put mulch on the back slope in order to make it look better. So I say all these things. So inevitably, every third weekend, she'll say something like this. She'll say, do you want me to take the dog so you can just not be bothered? Now, when I hear her say, do you want me to take the dog so you're not bothered? I know what that's code for. That's code for, do you want me to take the dog so you can get up and do something? And so I say, like, well, what are you talking about? And she says, well, so you can, like, paint the back fence? And I'm thinking, like, what? Inside, I'm going, I mentioned painting the back fence like 2 years ago. And she brought it up. I'm like, how does she remember this? I mean, she can't even remember like to turn the TV off at night. And here she is remembering something that happened like 2 years ago. But keeping no records of wrong, we all struggle with this. It's something like we've all dealt with. I mean, maybe you've heard something like this. Like someone will say like, you know what? I remember last Christmas when I forgot the gravy, you said the exact same thing. And you're thinking, do you remember that from last Christmas? Or I remember 2 years ago when I wanted my parents to come over, you gave me that exact same look on your face. Paul's saying, don't make records of wrong, but that's incredibly challenging. And it's a hard thing about being in love and dealing with this in relationship. And then it goes on to say this, and then it's going to kind of take a little bit of a turn right here. It says, it does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. And then this, love never gives up, never loses faith, always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. And you read that and you think to yourself, now remember, look at these words. Paul uses words like never, never, always, and every. Never, love never gives up, never loses faith. It's always hopeful. I mean, how about like it's sometimes hopeful and endures through every circumstance. And so you read that and you look and you think to yourself, that sounds like love is blind. Or you read that and you look at that and you think to yourself, like, who does this? Or, even worse, like, how can I do this? Or this feels like codependent behavior. Like, it sounds like I'm supposed to let you just do everything and I pretend I don't see it. But what it is Paul is actually talking about a key component in keeping love alive in the relationship. He's talking about a key component. And here's the reality. In all relationships, there is this. There is a gap in all relationships. And this gap is filled with expectations. Now, what we mean by this is this. There's an expectation of what we expect them to be like and what they're actually like. All relationships have this. It's what we expect them to be like and what they're actually like. What we expect them to do and what they actually do. What we expect them to say or what they actually say. We expect them to be home for dinner and they walk through the door at 8 at night. We expect them to not bring work home on the weekends, but they end up bringing work home on the weekends. You see, every relationship has these. Every relationship has a gap. And there are two options to put in this gap when our expectations aren't met. We can believe the best or we can assume the worst. You can believe the best or you can assume the worst. Let me illustrate it by this. Believe the best. Something along the lines of this. Oh, she's running late. Oh, that's right, she's picking up the kids. I bet the kids were slow to get into the car. I bet she stopped and got them ice cream. I love when she takes the kids to get ice cream. That's believe the best. Assume the worst. She's late again. I bet she pulled over the side of the road and wanted to talk to mom. She always does that. Does she not care about me? You see, you believe the best or you assume the worst. Or how about this one? There he goes plopping himself down on the couch again. Watch this. I'm gonna ask him a question and I bet all he'll do is grunt. Or believes the best. Oh man, look how he's sitting on that couch. I hate that work is so challenging and hard for him. I'm so glad that I have a guy that's working so hard. You see, there are two things that we can put in this gap when it comes to dealing with unmet expectations. And what happens is we all have a gap. Every relationship does it. Every relationship does. And the reality is what you put in is a product of two things. It's a product of what we see, what you actually experience and what you actually see happening. And it's also a product of this, what we've seen. What we've seen is this idea of what you've seen growing up. So you had a family that is critical, Or you had a mom or a dad that's a punisher. That will impact what you put here. Or you have a family that's full of grace. Or you have a family that's full of joy and full of forgiveness and let people off the hook. That will impact what you put here. You see, we all have a gap. And there's two different things that you tend to put in it. You can either believe the best or you can assume the worst. Let me ask you a question. Which way do you tend to go? Which way do you tend to go? You get a call and he's supposed to be someplace and he's not there. Which way do you tend to go? You get a text and she was supposed to bring home dinner, but she can't. She asked you to do it. Which way do you tend to go? Couples that stay in love do this. Couples that stay in love, they do this. Now here's the reality when you think about this. When you think about couples that are in love, and it comes to the context of this, and it comes to this idea of a gap, we feel like couples that are in love probably have no gap, meaning they probably have their expectation meeting exactly what happens. Now there's a guy who wrote a book, and his name's Marcus Buckingham. And the book that he wrote is One Thing That You Need to Know. And what he did in the context of all these different things, he came up with one thing that you need to know. And in this case, this is the context of marriage. And so he asked a whole bunch of people who were married and they were happily married, what was the secret of their marriage? Now, going into the research, this is what they thought. Researchers figured that the secret to couples' happiness was that they knew each other so well that their expectations were totally in line and that they rarely felt rejection or disappointment. That's why they're in love. That's why they're so in love. Essentially this. In effect, they believed the couples had little or no gap. So they thought, we know why they're in love and why it's working so much is because they have no gap. That's what they thought. This is what they found. The researchers found instead that in every measurable category, the couples rated their partner higher than they rated themselves. They rated their couples higher, the partner higher, than they rated themselves. This was their conclusion. Couples in love were able to see the best in their partner. Couples in love were able to see the best in their partner. And isn't that interesting? Because isn't that what you felt like when you first fell in love? All you do is see the good. All you do is think, they're so wonderful. Or, they're so great. Or look how incredible they are in that area. All you do is see the best in your partner. And people might even try to tell you otherwise, but all you did was tell them differently because all you could do is see the best. The conclusion, the spouse who assumes that their spouse possesses strengths that he or she doesn't have feel like they will have a strong marriage. Essentially this, I see the best in you, even better than you see in yourself. They saw the best in their spouse, even better than the spouse saw in themselves. So they had advice, and this is what it is. Find the most generous explanation for each other's behavior. Then believe it. Find the most generous explanation for each other's behavior. Then believe it. So I walk through the door after work, and my dog greets me, and he's all excited, and his tail's going 100 miles an hour, and he thinks I've been gone for 4 years, and I've just been gone to work. And I go into the kitchen, and my wife's working at the sink, and she just looks at me and kind of gives me a head nod. Assumes the worst. Really? That's how you're going to greet me? You couldn't just look and smile and say, how was your day? Believes the best. Man, I can't believe she has to do that. I mean, I can't believe everyone has her making dinner. Taking care of a house with 8 grown-up people is ridiculous. I am so lucky to marry someone who's willing to work so hard and that loves me so much. You see, we have a choice. We can assume the best, or we can assume the worst, or we can believe the best. We can assume the worst, or we can believe the best. Which way do you go? 1 Corinthians 13, love never gives up. It never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. How can you do that? Because I always believe the best. How can you do that? Because you always believe the best. Which way do you go, though? Which way do you go? Here's the reality. Let's not be couples that are just married because of the kids. Don't we want more than that? I mean, that's a noble gesture. But let's be bigger than that. Or let's not just be couples or people that are in love and that we just kind of like tolerate each other. I mean, we say that we're in love, but it's just this level of toleration. Let's not be people that, as married couples, we check our heart at the door when we walk in at night. I think, don't we want that? Something bigger than that? People who believe the best. People who believe the best find connection and intimate love that everyone's looking for. What do? What cycle do you find yourself in? What cycle do you find yourself in? Now, for a second, I'm just going to speak as a guy. I'm going to do that, obviously, because it's all I know. I'm a guy. And so I'm just going to give you a guy's perspective. And this is what I know. When it comes to this whole concept, we know there's a gap. We know there's a gap between what we do and what you want us to do. We know there's times we fall short. But here's the reality. The last thing we want to do is let you down. The last thing as guys we want to do is not come through for you. Do you know what's like in our core, in our being? We want to provide. We want to take care of. We want to come through. The last thing we want to do is let you down. And when we do something, it doesn't quite meet your expectations. And when this is what we feel, this is what comes out of this when you respond this way. It makes us feel like we're no good. You know what we feel like? We let you down. Makes us feel like you're never enough. We're never enough. That's what happens. We don't want to be that way, but that's what happens. And here's the reality. If you can believe the best in us, this is the reality. The better we'll be. I know it doesn't feel like it or sound like it, but the better we'll be. If you can believe the best in us, the more we'll be drawn together. If you can believe the best in us, it will actually make us better as a couple. And here's the reality. This is how guys feel. I know. But I also know, girls, you feel the exact same way. You feel the exact same way. So, when the opportunity arises and you have a choice of which way to go, believe the best, because that's what couples in love and who find connection experience. Here's the answer. Find the most generous explanation for each other's behavior. Then believe it. Then believe it. Why is this so important? First of all, it's important because, and you know this, we're all starving for intimate, connecting, loving relationship. We are. In all married couples, we want to be in love and we want it to feel like a connected, intimate, loving relationship. We're all looking for that. Second reason is this. There's a generation of kids that are following behind us. And they don't know what a lifelong, loving relationship and many times looks like. They don't know how to find it. They don't even know if it's possible. And in some ways, they've actually given up even trying. And it's up to us to show them differently and show them how a lifelong, loving relationship works and what it looks like. And finally, this. There's nothing that speaks louder to our culture about Christianity than our marriage. There is no greater evangelistic tool in the context of reaching those who don't believe Jesus than the context and the idea of marriage. If you look at any trend of people who aren't following Jesus or any trend, people are trying to figure out, how do you make marriage work? How do you figure out that? And as Christians, we should be able to show them. Not because we're better than them, because we're not. Because we're broken and we're flawed. But we follow a God, Jesus, who went to a cross and died and showered grace and love on us, and then asked us to shower that same grace and love on the people that we want to spend the rest of our life with. You see, the reality is this: it's not our church, it's not our buildings, it's not our worship that will point people to Jesus. You know what it is? It's our lives. And even more specifically, and maybe even more scary, it's our marriages. It's our marriages. You know, we can give thousands of dollars to feed the homeless, or we can go down to Mexico and we can build houses, or we can put hundreds of people in life groups. But if our marriages aren't working, it's conflicting to people. It's conflicting to people. You see, our God came and he showered us with grace and love. And he told us, I want you to take that grace and love that I've given to you, and I want you to give it to the person that you love more than anything in the world. And when you do that, watch it change your marriage. Watch it change your family. And maybe, just maybe, watch it change an entire culture. Love, it never gives up. It never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. Let's pray. God, we are grateful people, and we are grateful, Lord, that the foundation of this is your love for us. And Lord, allow us to be people that can shower that love on the people in our lives. Lord, I pray for the marriages, that the people that are watching now and they're in marriage, they're in a marriage, Lord, that's struggling, Lord. I pray that you'll bless them and you'll be with them and you'll guide them. I pray that you'll keep all people who are watching, Lord, who are in the context of a marriage, will you help it to be strong? Will you help them to fall further in love with each other? I pray for people that are in any relationship, God. May they use these concepts to work better and connect in relationship. Lord, we love you. And we pray, Lord, that your love will continue to fall on us so we can share it with others. In Jesus' name, amen.
I've carried a burden too long on my own. I wasn't created to bear it alone. I hear your invitation to let it all go. I see now, I'm laying it down. I know that I need you. I run to the Father, I fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend. So I run to the Father again and again and again and again. Oh, oh, oh. You saw my condition, a plan from the start. Your son for redemption, the price for my heart. I don't have a context for this kind of love. I don't understand, I can't comprehend. All I know is I need you. I run to the Father, I fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend. So mercy is calling out. Just as I am, you pull me in. I know I need you now. I run to the Father, I fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend. So I run to the Father again and again. I run to the Father, I fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart found a surgeon, my soul found a friend. So I run to the Father again and again and again and again. Oh, 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 oh.
Thank you for joining us. If you would like to reach out to a pastor to talk about some possible next steps, get information about attending or viewing one of our live gatherings, or to make a contribution, be sure to visit our website at harborpoint.church. Also, don't forget to take a look at the discussion questions on our website to help you keep the conversation going.